The first thing I did after being reborn was not scream. I didn't cry. I didn't check my pulse like the women in dramas do. I just looked at the empty chair beside me. I moved my bag onto it. That was all. One small black school bag. One plastic chair in classroom. 3B at Westbrook Academy in Boston. In my first life, that chair belonged to him. He never even had to ask. I saved it every single morning. I wiped the dust off the desk. I angled the chair so the sun wouldn't hit his eyes. I placed my spare pen on the right side. He hated reaching across his notebook. I used to think love was made of those tiny invisible things, the kind nobody notices until they're gone. I was wrong. Love was not what I had been giving him. I had been building a throne. He learned to sit on it without ever asking who carried the wood. His name was Ryan Whitfield. The teachers called him a once-in-a-generation genius. The papers photographed him beside his trophies. His exam answers got passed around like sacred text. He was also the boy who watched me lose my scholarship. He watched them accuse me of stealing his research. He watched my future collapse in front of the entire school. And he said nothing. Not because he didn't know the truth. He knew. He had copied my framework, my notes, my annotated papers, my model diagrams, my corrected calculations, my sleepless nights. But when the school asked whose work it really was, he lowered his eyes. He let them call me a desperate girl, clinging to a brighter boy's name. I died at 27. A hospital bracelet around my wrist, a rejection email open on my phone, his interview playing on the television above my bed. I owe everything to discipline, he said, smiling into the camera. Talent is useless without structure. I laughed so hard, my heart monitor started screaming. Structure. That was what he called me. Not Madison. Not friend. Not the girl who pulled him back from every breakdown. The girl who hid his absences, fixed his drafts, took the blame for him. Structure. By midnight, my heart gave up. By dawn, I opened my eyes again. 17 years old. My old uniform. A clean notebook in front of me. Classroom 3B, slowly filling with students. The bell rang. Chairs scraped against the floor. Someone behind me whispered about the national rankings. A girl near the aisle complained the room smelled like chalk and rain. Everything was exactly like it had been 10 years before. Even the crack in the window was still there, thin like a hairline fracture. I touched my chest once. I expected pain. I expected wires. I expected the ghost of that hospital room. Nothing. Just a heartbeat, young and steady, waiting to be spent better this time. Then I heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Unhurried, familiar, arrogant, without even trying. Ryan always arrived 3 minutes after the first bell. In my first life, I turned around with a smile. I lifted my bag off the chair for him. This time, I didn't turn around. He stopped beside me. The air in the room changed before he even spoke. I remembered that too. People always made space for Ryan. Even when he said nothing, teachers softened. Students straightened up. Girls checked their hair in dark phone screens. He stood beside the occupied chair. He waited for the world to correct itself. When I still didn't move, he tapped the desk once. Madison. My hand tightened around my pen, but my voice came out calm. Morning. My seat. I looked up at him then. He was exactly as I remembered. Tall, pale, beautiful in that cold academic way. Dark hair falling over tired eyes. His tie loose because rules were for ordinary people. His face blank because emotion was a tool he used only when he needed it. The sight should have hurt. Instead, it felt like looking at a museum painting. After you learn the painter was a fraud. There are seats in the back, I said. His eyes moved to my bag, then back to me. You saved it yesterday. Yesterday. In this timeline, yes. In this life, yesterday I had still been the old Madison. Still smiling, still useful, still stupid. I almost laughed. Today, I need the space. For what? My future. He blinked once. It was so small, nobody else would have noticed. I noticed because in my first life, I lived on those signs. His confusion, his irritation, his hunger, his fear. Back then, I could read him better than I could read myself. This time, I used that knowledge like a knife. I turned it quietly in my palm. He waited another second. He expected me to blush and apologize. I opened my notebook instead. The first interruption came from Mr. Carter, our math teacher. He walked in with a stack of ranking sheets. His face wore its usual permanent disappointment. Seats, everyone. Whitfield, sit down or perform your genius standing. A few students laughed. Ryan did not. He looked at the back row. Only 2 chairs remained. One beside Tyler Brooks, who smelled faintly of energy drinks and soldering metal. One beneath the flickering projector, where the light gave everyone headaches. Ryan hated the back. He hated blocked views, noise, distraction, anything unpredictable. I knew that because I spent years eliminating those things for him. He never had to ask. Finally, he walked away, his chair scraping at the back of the room. It was the most beautiful sound I'd heard in 2 lifetimes. That morning's lecture was on probability. In my first life, I barely listened. I was too busy tearing my binder in half so Ryan could follow along. This time, I wrote down every example, every shortcut, every warning. Mr. Carter announced the Academy's top 3 students would be nominated. The National Future Scholars Program, the same program Ryan won in my first life. Using a proposal built from my discarded ideas, the nomination depended on 3 things: exam rank, research originality, faculty recommendation. My stomach tightened. There it was. The same road that once led me straight to ruin, laid out again, like a trap, waiting for the same foot. Madison Cole, Mr. Carter said suddenly. My head snapped up. Since you look unusually awake today, answer the next one. A few people turned to look. In my first life, I always froze when teachers called on me without warning. I was too busy juggling Ryan's missing assignments in my head. His meals, his moods, his schedule. Today, my mind was mine. I stood up. I walked to the board. I solved the problem in 4 lines instead of the usual 8. My hand didn't shake. The chalk didn't break. When I turned around, the room was silent. Mr. Carter stared at the board. That is unexpectedly efficient. From the back row, I felt Ryan watching me. I sat down without looking at him. At lunch, the old pattern tried to return. It came wearing Vanessa Reed's perfume, carrying 2 cartons of milk. Vanessa had been my best friend in my first life. At least, that's what I called her. Until the hearing, when she testified I was emotionally dependent on Ryan, possibly jealous of his success. I later learned Ryan had helped her win an internship by recommending her essay. My essay, reworded. She slid into the seat across from me. She gave me the bright, careful smile of someone approaching a stray dog. What happened this morning? I attended class. You know what I mean? Her eyes flicked toward Ryan's usual table. He sat alone, his tray untouched. Everyone saw that. You made him sit at the back. I didn't make him do anything. Ah. She lowered her voice. You 2 have a system. That word almost made me smile. System, structure, seat. Funny how nobody ever called it love. Unless the girl was the one giving it. The system expired. Vanessa frowned. Did he do something? The answer rose in my throat, like blood. Yes. He let them destroy me. He let me die nameless, while he stood under bright lights and thanked discipline. He took every soft part of me and sharpened it into a ladder. But none of that had happened yet. Not in this life. And saying it out loud would make me sound insane. So I said no. I just don't want my life attached to his chair. She stared at me like I'd started speaking another language. Then she leaned closer. Be careful. Boys like Ryan don't chase people. If he stops needing you, you'll regret acting proud. There it was again. The invisible leash, disguised as advice. My first life self would have panicked at that. She would have glanced across the cafeteria, terrified. But the woman inside me now had already seen where being needed leads. I only lifted my milk carton and said, maybe I want to find out who I am when I'm not useful to him. Vanessa had no answer for that. By the end of the first week, the academy noticed something was wrong with its genius. Not wrong enough to name. Not yet. Just small failures where perfection used to sit. Ryan arrived without his lab goggles on Monday. On Tuesday, he submitted the wrong problem set. Nobody had reminded him. Mr. Carter changed the upload folder. On Wednesday, he forgot the oral quiz schedule entirely. He walked into literature class, carrying a physics notebook. None of these things ruined him. A boy like Ryan could make mistakes and still be called brilliant. But the teachers began tilting their heads. Students began whispering, and Ryan began looking at me like I had stolen something from him. He cornered me after chemistry lab, just outside the supply room, where the air smelled of ethanol and metal. I was returning glassware, my arms full. His hand closed around the doorframe above my shoulder, not touching me, blocking me. In my first life, that posture would have made my heart race, for pathetic reasons. Now it only irritated me. You changed your timetable, he said. Yes. You switched out of independent study. Yes. We always used that block together. No, you used it. I supervised. His jaw tightened. Why are you doing this? A beaker clinked softly in my tray. I looked at him, really looked. Without the worship of 17-year-old Madison, Ryan was not a god. He was a boy with shadows under his eyes, and panic pressed flat beneath his pride. He didn't understand why the floor had shifted. He only knew the servant had stepped away from the altar. I have my own project now. You don't do research alone. I do now. That's inefficient for you. His face changed. Just for a second, something raw showed through. Anger, yes, but underneath it, alarm. The kind of alarm you feel when a familiar door opens onto a wall. If this is about the seat, take it back tomorrow. I almost dropped the tray from laughing. You think this is about a chair? You're acting irrational? No, I said softly. For the first time, I'm acting with memory. He stared at me. I realized my mistake too late. The word memory hung between us like smoke. His eyes narrowed. Ryan missed birthdays, meals, apologies, but he never missed anomalies. That was the danger of him. He noticed cracks. He picked at them until people bled. What memory? He asked. I stepped around him. The kind girls get after wasting too much time. That night, I opened the old notebook, the one I used to track Ryan's entire life. It was pathetic, seeing it again, page after page of his exam dates, his preferred study intervals, his migraine triggers, his competition deadlines, the foods he skipped when anxious, the phrases that calmed him down, the teachers he avoided, the topics he secretly struggled with. It looked less like a school notebook, more like an instruction manual for maintaining a machine. In my first life, I thought those details proved how much I loved him. Now they proved how thoroughly I had disappeared. I tore out every page, not dramatically, not with tears, one by one, cleanly, until the metal spiral showed through, like a spine. Then I turned to a fresh page. I wrote my own name at the top, Madison Cole. Underneath it, I wrote 3 goals. Rank top 3. Submit an original proposal. Leave this academy owing nobody anything. I stared at the words for a long time. They looked too simple to hold a whole life. Then I began working. My project in the first life was called Adaptive Neural Mapping for Motor Rehabilitation. Ryan mocked the title as too clinical. Then he later submitted a refined version under his own name, Predictive Motion Interfaces in Post-Traumatic Recovery. The judges praised his originality. I clapped until my palms hurt. This time, I would not rebuild the exact same project. That would be too easy and too dangerous. Ryan knew enough of the old idea to circle it. I needed something he couldn't steal by proximity. So I moved the concept away from machines, toward learning itself, a model predicting when high-performing students become dependent on invisible support. It was elegant. It was cruel. In a way, it was a study of Ryan. I spent nights in the library, reading until the security lights dimmed. I learned to code the survey models I once begged him to explain. I emailed Professor Hayes, a visiting cognitive scientist. Ryan had ignored her because she didn't flatter him. I asked sharp questions. I rewrote my abstract 6 times. I stopped answering Ryan's late-night messages. At first, they were ordinary. Send Carter's corrected sheet. Then shorter, need the lab protocol. Then colder, you forgot to upload the shared notes. I had to breathe through that one. Shared notes. My notes. In the old life, I uploaded them to a folder named R+M, because even naming myself second had felt romantic. This time, I renamed the folder private. I watched his message sit unread until morning. On Friday, Ryan scored second on a timed math drill. Second. Not 10th, not failing. Just second. But for Ryan, second place might as well have been a public execution. The room reacted before he did. Chairs went silent. Pens paused. Mr. Carter checked the sheet twice, probably hoping arithmetic itself had made a mistake. Top score, Mr. Carter announced slowly. Madison Cole. The class turned. For a moment, nobody breathed. Vanessa's mouth fell open. Tyler, sitting 2 rows back, gave a low whistle. Ryan didn't move. He looked at the ranking sheet. Then at me, like the paper had insulted him in my handwriting. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt something colder, heavier, proof. Not that I was better than him, but that I had never been as small as everyone made me feel. My first life had been a room with all the windows painted shut. This score was the first crack of air. After class, Mr. Carter asked me to stay behind. In my first life, teachers only called me back to ask about Ryan. Where he was, whether he'd eaten, whether he was prepared. This time, Mr. Carter held my answer sheet like it was evidence of a crime. "Did Whitfield tutor you?" he asked. The question hit harder than it should have. "No, you used a variation of his compression method." "He uses a variation of mine." Mr. Carter's eyebrows rose. I reached into my bag and pulled out an old practice notebook. Not the Ryan manual, the one I kept hidden in my first life, filled with rejected shortcuts and half-formed methods. I had recreated some pages from memory over the past week. Dates, drafts, margins full of my own thinking. I've been developing this for a while. He flipped through the pages slowly. His expression changed. Teachers loved genius when it arrived loudly in a boy. When it arrived quietly in a girl who'd sat beside him for years, they just called it surprising. "You should submit some of this to the regional journal," he said finally. "I intend to submit something bigger." "For the national program?" "Yes." He closed the notebook. "Then stop hiding behind Whitfield." I almost told him I had never hidden behind Ryan. I had been hidden by everyone else. But I swallowed the sentence. Some truths didn't need to be handed to people who arrived late. When I left the room, Ryan was waiting outside. He had heard. Of course he had. His hands were in his pockets. His expression was blank. But there was a strange stillness around him, the kind that comes right before glass shatters. "You kept notebooks for me." I hugged my notebook to my chest. I kept my own work. From everyone. That method was familiar. It should be. You watched me use it for 2 years. I improved it. In another life? Maybe. His eyes flashed. There it was again. I'd said too much. You keep saying things like that. Maybe you should stop listening. I can't. Those 3 words landed strangely. Not romantic, not soft, more like a confession, dragged out through clenched teeth. I looked at him. For 1 second, I saw the outline of the madness that would come later. Not insanity in the theatrical sense. Not screaming in the rain. Something more precise. A mind that built its balance around one person and couldn't tolerate her becoming unknown. Try, I said. Then I walked away. The next interruption arrived in a blue envelope. Future scholars' invitations usually went out after midterms. In my first life, Ryan got his in front of the whole class. I watched him open it while pretending not to hope my name might be called. It never was. This time, an envelope appeared in my locker 3 weeks early, sealed with a silver crest. My fingers went numb when I saw it. Inside was not an invitation. It was a warning. Dear Miss Cole, your preliminary project title has been flagged for conceptual overlap with another submitted abstract. Please attend a faculty review meeting Friday at 4 p.m. For a full minute, I only heard the blood in my ears. Overlap. Another submitted abstract. I knew before I saw the attachment. The competing proposal was called Cognitive Load Displacement in Elite Student Performance. Submitted by Ryan Whitfield. My hands went cold. He hadn't stolen the old project this time. He had stolen the shape of my new one. Not the data, not the model, not the title, but enough of the concept to muddy the water. Enough to make the faculty wonder if I was orbiting his brilliance again. For 1 horrible second, I was back in the disciplinary hall, standing under fluorescent lights, while 3 adults discussed my future like a stain they needed to remove. Then the fear passed slowly, like a tide pulling back. Because this time I had expected something. Not this exactly, but something. I opened my laptop. I pulled up every timestamped draft, every email to Professor Hayes, every library access log, every survey document saved under my private account. In my first life, I trusted people. This time, I trusted metadata. Friday came gray and rainy. The faculty review room smelled of coffee and old paper. Mr. Carter sat at one end, Professor Hayes at the other. Between them sat Dean Whitman, a woman who wore pearls like armor. Ryan was already there when I walked in. He didn't look nervous. That was his gift. Panic made him quieter, sharper, almost beautiful. Dean Whitman folded her hands. Miss Cole, Mr. Whitfield, you've both submitted proposals about dependency structures. Since your academic histories are closely linked, we need authorship clarity. Before nominations proceed, closely linked. The polite phrase for a girl who spent years as an unpaid support system. Ryan spoke first. My concept came from observing inefficient habits in high-ranking cohorts. His voice was calm, perfect. He could have sold poison as medicine. Dean Whitman turned to me. Miss Cole? I placed my folder on the table. Not thick, not dramatic, just complete. My project examines invisible academic support and the misattribution of achievement. I began drafting it after I withdrew from shared study arrangements 3 weeks ago. My earliest time-stamped outline predates Mr. Whitfield's submission by 11 days. I also have correspondence with Professor Hayes discussing the model before his abstract was filed. Professor Hayes adjusted her glasses. That is correct. Ryan's gaze cut toward her, almost imperceptibly. I continued. I also have a record of Mr. Whitfield requesting access to my notes. After I made my folder private, he did not receive access. Dean Whitman looked at Ryan. Mr. Whitfield? For the first time, his composure shifted. Barely. The topic is broad. It is, I said. That's why I brought my survey structure, variable map, and bibliography. If Mr. Whitfield's concept is independent, he should have equal materials. Silence. There it was. The beautiful, clean drop. Ryan had always been brilliant at finishing what already existed. He could refine, compress, solve, polish. But beginnings, messy human beginnings, that was where I had carried him. I had brought him sparks and watched him build lamps, then let everyone praise him for inventing light. Dean Whitman extended her hand toward him. Mr. Whitfield, your development documents? He opened his folder. 3 pages. 1 abstract. 1 reference list. 1 diagram. No drafts. No survey. No progression. Mr. Carter leaned back. Professor Hayes's mouth thinned. Ryan looked at me then. The hatred in his eyes wasn't hot. It was wounded, as if I had betrayed him by proving he reached for my work, and found a blade hidden underneath. The dean dismissed us separately. I was told to wait in the hall. 10 minutes later, Professor Hayes came out. She closed the door behind her. Your proposal will proceed, she said, separately. Under my supervision. If you accept, my knees nearly failed. I accept. Her gaze softened, only slightly. You should know something. Students like Mr. Whitfield rarely understand where their support ends and their own ability begins. That doesn't make theft acceptable. I know. Do you? She asked. The question unsettled me. I thought of my first life. How long I defended him. How many times I told myself he was tired, pressured, misunderstood. How often I turned his entitlement into tragedy. Because tragedy was easier to forgive than cruelty. I'm learning, I said. She nodded. Good. Learn faster. When I turned to leave, Ryan stood at the far end of the corridor, rain light striping his face through the windows. He should have gone back to class. Instead, he waited, like a ghost haunting the place. His future first refused him. You planned that, he said. Yes. You wanted me humiliated. No, I wanted myself protected. The humiliation was yours. His fingers curled once at his side. You used to tell me everything. I used to be stupid. You weren't stupid. That stopped me. He said it like an accusation. Not comfort, not apology. En accusation. You knew exactly what I needed, he continued. You knew when I was missing something before I knew it myself. You knew how to explain things, so they became obvious. You knew how to make people leave me alone. Don't pretend you were some helpless shadow. My throat tightened despite myself, because there it was. The closest thing to recognition I'd ever gotten from him, and it was still about what I'd done for him. If you knew all that, why did you let everyone treat me like your shadow? He stared at me. In that silence, I heard the answer. Because it benefited him, I walked past him. He grabbed my sleeve. Not hard. Just enough. My entire body went cold. In my first life, he touched my wrist once. At the hearing. After I was already ruined, he whispered, Don't make this worse. As if my truth was the problem. The memory flashed so violently, I turned before thinking. I slapped his hand away. The sound echoed. Students at the stairwell froze. Ryan looked at his hand like it belonged to someone else. Never, I said, my voice low. Touch me to stop me again. His face went blank. Too blank. I left him there. The academy changed after the review. Not openly. Elite schools never admit when their myths crack, but teachers began calling on me without adding Ryan's name. Students asked to see my notes, not his. Tyler started sitting beside me during independent study, not because he wanted anything dramatic. He liked building ugly little robots that fell off desks. He said my probability models could make them less suicidal. He was loud, untidy, irritating, and refreshingly uninterested in being worshipped. You know Whitfield watches you like a surveillance camera? Tyler said one afternoon. He was soldering something that sparked suspiciously. Then wave. He did. With 2 fingers. Across the library, Ryan looked down at his book. Tyler grinned. Wow, if looks could kill, I'd be a closed casket funeral. Don't provoke him. I'm not provoking. I'm existing attractively. I snorted despite myself. It felt strange. Laughing in the library. In my first life, laughter was something I rationed around Ryan's concentration. Too loud, and he frowned. Too frequent, and he left. Too happy, and he asked what I was avoiding. With Tyler, sound simply existed. The world did not collapse. That was the cruelest discovery of my second life. Peace was not dramatic. It was having lunch without scanning someone else's mood. It was studying without expecting a message demanding help. It was choosing a seat because the light was good, not because someone else hated the glare. It was realizing my body had spent years braced for a storm, mistaking the tension for devotion. But Ryan's pursuit didn't fade. It sharpened. First, he tried logic. He left a printed schedule on my desk, color-coded exactly the way I used to make them for him. Both our names at the top. I threw it away without reading it. Then he tried nostalgia. A paper cup of black tea appeared beside my notebook, brewed the way I liked it during winter exams. I gave it to Tyler. He drank it and said it tasted like emotional manipulation. Then Ryan tried academic pressure. He requested we be paired for the regional ethics debate. He claimed our established rhythm would benefit the academy. Professor Hayes denied it before I even had to answer. The fourth attempt was different. It came from my mother. She called me on a Sunday evening, her voice bright with a strained politeness. The tone she used around important people. Madison, sweetheart, did you have a disagreement with Ryan? I closed my laptop slowly. Why? His mother called. Of course she did. Mrs. Whitfield was a retired pianist. Silver hair, soft hands, and the terrifying ability to make every request sound like a moral test. In my first life, she loved me because I kept Ryan functional. She once told me, "You're the only one who understands his storms." I had glowed for days. Now the memory tasted bitter. What did she say? I asked. She said Ryan has been under severe stress. He isn't eating properly. He barely sleeps. She said you two were close. She asked if you could talk to him. Did she ask how I am? My mother hesitated. That hesitation answered for her. Madison, she said carefully, I know you're trying to focus on yourself, and that's good. But people like Ryan are intense. If you've always helped him, stopping might feel cruel. I pressed my thumb against the edge of my desk until it hurt. My mother was not a villain. That almost made it worse. She was a woman raised to believe girls were kind when they absorbed damage quietly. In my first life, when I lost my scholarship, she cried. She asked if I had maybe confused my feelings with ambition. I had forgiven her because I had no energy left not to. This time I wanted to save both of us. If I could. Mom, I said, if a bridge collapses because one person stopped lying underneath it, do we blame the person who moved? She went quiet. I am not hurting Ryan by having my own life. He is hurting because he built comfort on access to me. That sounds harsh. It is harsh. It's also true. She breathed out slowly. Are you safe? The question surprised me. It was small, but it mattered. Yes, I said. I think so. Then I'll tell Mrs. Whitfield you're busy. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. Then I cried. Not for Ryan. Not exactly. I cried for the girl who would have rushed in after that call, terrified of being cruel. I cried because choosing myself felt less like triumph and more like pulling hooks from skin. Necessary. Bloody. Slow. Midterms arrived like weather. Everyone smelled them coming before they hit. The academy turned feral. Students slept in study rooms. Vending machines emptied by noon. Teachers pretended not to notice people crying in the stairwells. Ryan's decline became harder to hide. He still scored high, but his work lost its impossible smoothness. He made avoidable mistakes. He argued with teachers over wording. He submitted a chemistry analysis without the required calculations, something I used to add for him automatically. Before he ever sent it in, the rumor mill split into factions. Some said I had been distracting him for years, that he was better off without me. Others said he'd used me, and now looked ordinary. The truth was more dangerous than either rumor. Ryan was still brilliant. That's what people didn't understand. He wasn't a fraud in the simple sense. He had a rare mind. But rare minds can still be lazy in the places others carry them. He became exceptional, partly because he never had to waste energy on being human. I had done that part for him. On the morning of the qualifying exam, I arrived early. The hall was cold. Long desks arranged in rows. Candidate numbers taped to the corners. In my first life, Ryan and I sat side by side. I remembered sliding my extra calculator battery to him under the table. His had died. I remembered him placing first. I remembered missing the cutoff by 2 points. This time, my assigned seat was C14. Ryan's was C17. For 1 second, I just stared. Then I laughed once under my breath. The universe had a vicious sense of humor. I sat at Kais Prezice. I placed both my calculator batteries in my own pencil case. Ryan arrived 2 minutes before the exam. His eyes went to the seat beside me first, then to my hands, then to the empty space where an extra battery used to wait like tribute. He sat down slowly. "Madison?" he whispered. The proctor was still arranging papers. Around us, students muttered formulas like prayers. I didn't look at him. No, I didn't ask anything. "You were about to." His silence confirmed it. After a moment, he said, "My calculator is low." A laugh rose in my throat, sharp enough to cut. There are moments in life that aren't poetic until they repeat. This was one battery, 2 points. One future. A girl and a boy sitting side by side, while history waited to see if she'd betray herself again. "In the name of being kind." "Then you should have prepared," I said. His face turned toward me. "You always brought extra. For myself? For us? There is no us in this exam." The proctor called for silence. The papers came down. I opened mine. For 3 hours, the world narrowed to numbers and diagrams, the clean mercy of questions that didn't care who you loved. Halfway through, I heard Ryan's calculator beep. Low power. Then again. Then silence. My hand paused for half a second. In my first life, I would have passed the battery without thinking. This time, I kept writing. My pulse thundered. Not with guilt, with withdrawal. My body remembered obedience, even after my mind refused it. Ryan finished the exam by hand. He was good enough to survive that, but not good enough to remain untouched. Results were posted 2 days later, on the central board. Students crushed around it, shouting, groaning, laughing. I stood at the edge until the crowd thinned. I was suddenly afraid, not of failing, of succeeding. Failure was familiar. Success demanded a new self. Tyler appeared beside me, smelling like coffee and rain. "Want me to look first?" "No." "Want me to pretend I didn't offer? Because you're a strong, independent academic weapon?" "Yes." He gave a solemn nod. "Consider it forgotten." I stepped forward. Rank 3, Priya Sharma. For a moment, the hallway disappeared. Not because I had beaten him. That was too small a sentence. I had returned to the exact place where I once surrendered my future. By 2 points. And this time, I didn't move my hand under the table. This time, I kept the battery. This time, I kept myself. Then the whispers began. "Madison, she beat Whitfield. Again? Did something happen to him?" No one asked if something had happened to me. That was fine. They would learn. Ryan appeared at the edge of the crowd. His eyes found the board. Found his name? Found mine above it. His expression didn't change at first. Then he smiled. It was the wrong smile. Too calm. Too empty. He walked toward me. The crowd parted. Old habits die slower than truth. Congratulations, he said. Thank you. His gaze dropped to my pencil case. 1 battery. I understood him instantly. Of course I did. He wasn't accusing me of winning by skill. He was reducing my entire victory to the one thing I didn't give him. Preparation matters, I said. You wanted me to fail. I wanted to stop failing myself. His eyes hardened. Same result. No. It only feels the same to you. Because you think my resources belong to you? Tyler stepped closer. I lifted a hand slightly. Not yet. Ryan noticed. His gaze flicked to Tyler with a coldness I'd never seen from him before. Is he a new project? Tyler blinked. I'm actually my own disaster, thanks. I almost laughed. Ryan didn't. You'll get tired of her, Ryan told him. She seems gentle until she starts keeping score. The hallway went quiet. For a second, shame tried to rise in me. Then I recognized the trick. He was taking my memory, my boundaries, my evidence, and calling them cruelty. Men like Ryan didn't fear selfish women. They feared women who started counting accurately. Yes, I said clearly. I keep score now. Ryan looked back at me. And you're losing. I added. It was childish. It was unkind. It was also the first time in 2 lives I said exactly what I meant. Without softening the edge for his comfort, his smile vanished. The next week, he disappeared. Not fully. Ryan didn't abandon school. He attended exams, submitted work, answered questions when forced. But he stopped appearing in the cafeteria, stopped sitting in the library, stopped walking the routes where everyone could admire or fear him. He became a rumor in motion. Someone saw him leaving the computer lab at midnight. Someone heard he argued with Dean Whitman. Someone said he'd withdrawn his proposal entirely. Someone else said he was building something better, something that would end the conversation. I should have felt relieved. Instead, my unease grew, because Ryan silent was not Ryan defeated. Ryan silent was Ryan calculating. Professor Hayes noticed too. During one of our meetings, she watched me explain my revised model. Then she said, "You're distracted." I've been fine. Fine is not a research term. I lowered my pen. Ryan is planning something. Almost certainly. The bluntness startled me. You're not going to tell me I'm paranoid? No. High-control individuals often escalate when access is removed. He may attempt sabotage, social pressure, an institutional appeal, or an emotional crisis. Is he worth the hour? She shrugged. You're not the first talented girl to mistake dependency for intimacy. The sentence landed hard. Were you? Professor Hayes' expression shifted. Not soft, exactly, but human. Once. Mine was a pianist. Yours is a mathematician. Different instruments? Same song. I looked down at my model diagrams. How did you stop caring? I didn't. I stopped obeying the caring. That became my sentence for the next month. I still cared when Ryan came to class looking thinner. I still cared when I heard he'd fainted after skipping meals. I still cared when Mrs. Whitfield waited outside the gates, looking at me with desperate, accusing eyes. But I stopped obeying the caring. The semifinal required a public presentation. 10 candidates, a faculty panel, external judges, a student audience. In my first life, I sat near the front with Ryan's cue cards in my lap, mouthing his reminders while he spoke. This time, I stood backstage with my own slides loaded, my own name printed on the program. Madison Cole, Mapping Invisible Support Systems in Elite Academic Achievement. Ryan wasn't on the list. That should have been the end of him for the day. It was not. I was 5th to present. The first 4 talks blurred together. Machine learning, water filtration, genetic ethics, solar coatings. My hands were cold. But steady, Tyler sat in the audience beside Priya, both giving me exaggerated thumbs up like idiots. Professor Hayes sat on the panel, her expression unreadable. Dean Whitman checked her watch. Then, just as the 4th presenter finished, the projector flickered. The screen went black. A murmur moved through the hall. The technician hurried to the booth. Someone laughed nervously. Then the screen lit again. Not with the next presentation, with a folder directory. My folder directory. My stomach dropped. Files appeared one by one. Drafts, survey responses, diagrams, private notes. A red cursor moved across the screen, like it was controlled by an invisible hand. Then a document opened. Madison Cole, Research Journal, Personal Observations of Ryan Whitfield. Gasps rippled through the hall. For 1 second, I couldn't move. The document was real, but incomplete. It was one of my private analysis files, where I'd coded my observations about dependency patterns. I'd used Ryan as an initial case reference, under initials only. Someone had accessed it, stripped the context, renamed it, to make it look obsessive. Lines appeared highlighted. Subject becomes agitated when support is withdrawn. Subject externalizes blame. Subject attempts restoration of prior access. The audience whispered louder. My first life flashed again. A public room. Misrepresented evidence. Adults frowning. My name turning dirty in other people's mouths. Then the pattern broke. Tyler stood up. "Dean Whitman," he called loudly. "That screen is being controlled remotely from the East Lab network." Everyone turned. The technician shouted from the booth, "He's right! Someone bypassed the presenter queue." Dean Whitman rose. Cut the network. The screen went black again. My heart pounded so hard. My ribs hurt. I scanned the hall. Ryan wasn't in the audience. Of course he wasn't. Cowardice loved distance. Professor Hayes stood. "Miss Cole," she said calmly, as if my private files hadn't just been thrown onto a public screen. "Are you prepared to continue?" The hall went silent. There are moments when your life asks if you've truly changed, or only rehearsed confidence in safe rooms. My hands trembled. My face burned. Part of me wanted to run, to hide, to explain, to beg them not to misunderstand. That was the old Madison, still alive somewhere inside me, still terrified of being seen wrong. I walked onto the stage. The microphone hummed. "My presentation," I said, my voice shaking only once, "is about invisible support systems, and what happens when achievement is misattributed to people stabilized by uncredited labor. The interruption you just saw is not part of my presentation, but it is an excellent example of my topic." A stunned laugh passed through the room. I clicked to my first slide. My private research files were accessed and selectively displayed to imply personal obsession. In reality, all identifying details in my dataset are anonymized. My methodology has been reviewed by Professor Hayes. Since someone has chosen to demonstrate the consequences of support withdrawal in real time, I'll begin there. Professor Hayes's mouth twitched. Dean Whitman sat down slowly. I presented for 12 minutes. I explained dependency loops, emotional labor, academic scaffolding, and attribution bias. I showed how high performers often appear self-sufficient because someone else absorbs the friction, the scheduling, the proofreading, the emotional regulation, the recovery after failure, the conflict smoothing. I didn't name Ryan. I didn't need to. Everyone in that hall knew exactly whose absence had become loud. During questions, one judge leaned forward. "Miss Cole, how do you distinguish support from collaboration?" I answered without hesitation. Collaboration produces mutual visibility. Support becomes exploitation when one person's contribution disappears from the record. While the other person's reputation grows from it, the room went still. The judge nodded. Good answer. I stepped down to applause that began uncertainly, then strengthened. Not thunderous, not cinematic, real, uneven, human. It almost hurt more than silence. Backstage, my legs finally gave out. Tyler caught my elbow. You just turned a cyber attack into a thesis defense, he whispered. That was terrifyingly attractive in an academic way. Please, never say that again. Noted. Dean Whitman ordered an immediate investigation. The lab logs showed a login from a temporary admin account, created using credentials from a faculty assistant. But the access trail led to a device registered under a name I hadn't expected. Vanessa Reed. When they called her in, she cried before anyone accused her. I watched through the glass panel of the office. She folded in on herself, mascara streaking, hands shaking. In my first life, Vanessa betrayed me neatly. This time, she looked like someone who'd stepped into deep water, believing it was a puddle. Dean Whitman allowed me to sit in for part of the questioning. Because my files had been exposed, Professor Hayes stayed beside me. Vanessa kept saying, I didn't know he'd put it on the screen. I didn't know. Dean Whitman's voice was ice. Who is he? Vanessa looked at me once. Guilt twisted her face. Ryan. There it was. Not a surprise. Still a wound. He said Madison was unstable, Vanessa sobbed. He said she'd been collecting information on him for years. He said she was going to ruin him with fake research. He asked me to help him get proof before she destroyed his future. I laughed once. I couldn't help it. Everyone looked at me. Sorry, I said. It's just impressive how often his future requires access to my files. Vanessa cried harder. Dean Whitman continued. How did you obtain access? He gave me the assistant login. I don't know how he got it. He told me to copy the files from her private storage. He said he only needed to show the dean privately. And you believed him? Professor Hayes asked. Vanessa wiped her face. I wanted to. That sentence was the first honest thing she'd said. I felt no triumph watching her collapse, only exhaustion. In my first life, I thought betrayal came from hatred. It often came from convenience, from wanting to stay close to power, from believing the version of events that cost you the least. Vanessa turned to me. I'm sorry. In the old life, I would have comforted her. I would have said it was okay, just to stop the pain in the room from spreading. This time, I said, I know. Her face crumpled with relief. Then I added, but I don't forgive you yet. Relief shattered. Good. Something should. Ryan was suspended pending investigation. For 3 days, the academy breathed differently. Teachers spoke in lowered voices. Students pretended not to stare at me. My presentation spread beyond the hall. Someone had recorded the interruption. And my response... By Monday, clips were circulating online. Girl turns sabotage into research. Mic drop. Whitfield drama gets worse. I hated the attention. I needed the nomination. Both could be true. The panel advanced me to finals. Ryan saw no message. That worried me more than 100 messages would have. On the 4th day, I found him in my seat. Not beside it, in it. Classroom 3B was empty when I arrived early. Rain tapped against the cracked window. Ryan sat at the desk I'd chosen on the first day of my second life, hands folded, my usual morning light falling across his face. He looked thinner. His hair was messy, his uniform immaculate. The contrast made him look less like a student, more like a portrait someone had scratched with a key. I stopped in the doorway. You're suspended, I said. From classes. Not from entering the building. That's not how suspension works. He smiled faintly. Are you going to report me? Yes. I reached for my phone. Madison, he said. Something in his voice made me pause. Not softness, not apology, emptiness. I remember, he said. The room tilted. My hand tightened around my phone. What? I remember the hospital. Not all of it. Pieces. Your face on a screen. Your name in an article. A hearing room. You wearing a blue coat. Me saying nothing. His eyes lifted to mine. I remember you dying. The world went silent except for the rain. No, that wasn't allowed. The one advantage I had was memory. My private map of the trap. He wasn't supposed to have any of it. He was supposed to be trapped in the present. While I walked around him with the knowledge of a ghost. How? I whispered. I started dreaming after the exam. His voice was calm, but his fingers pressed together until the knuckles whitened. At first, I thought it was stress. Then I saw details I couldn't know. Your apartment. The plagiarism article. My interview. The hospital monitor. He swallowed. You laughed. I remembered that laugh. The last ugly sound I ever made. Ryan looked down at my desk. I thought if I could make you admit it, the dreams would stop. So you exposed my files? I needed proof you remembered too. You needed control. His gaze snapped up. Yes. The honesty was so sudden it cut through my anger. He stood. I don't know how to exist in this version. He stared at him. Me pulse hammering. I knew you helped me, he said. Before, I knew more than I admitted. But I didn't know what it became after. I didn't know you would. His voice broke strangely, like a machine hitting metal. I didn't know you would die. You didn't need to know I died to tell the truth. Silence. He looked away first. That was new. For one insane second, pity moved in me. Not forgiveness. Not longing. Pity, because remembering wasn't redemption. It was punishment with a mirror. He had seen the future built from his silence, and now he had to live in a world where the person he used didn't worship him anymore. Then he ruined even that. If you remember, he said, stepping closer, then you know we're connected. The pity vanished. No, Ryan. No. Shared trauma is not a contract. You came back because of me. I came back despite you. His face tightened. Everything changed when you moved the bag. Yes. Then, move it back. The simplicity of it almost frightened me. He truly believed the universe could be repaired by restoring my obedience. The seat, the notes, the batteries, the girl who softened every edge of his life. You still don't understand, I said. I understand that without you, I become someone I don't recognize. That person is you. I was just blocking your view. He flinched. I called security. Ryan didn't stop me. He only sat back down in my chair. He laughed once under his breath. Quiet and broken. Security escorted him out through the side entrance. Students saw. Of course they saw. By lunch, rumors multiplied like bacteria. Ryan threatened her. Ryan confessed. Ryan lost his mind. Ryan remembered another timeline. That last one, thankfully, was treated as a joke. But I was no longer laughing. If Ryan remembered pieces, everything had changed. He knew what he had done. He knew what evidence might exist. And worst of all, he knew my deepest wound. The disciplinary hearing. The place where my first future died. A week later, the investigation concluded. Vanessa received probation. She lost her internship recommendation. The faculty assistant was dismissed for credential negligence. Ryan faced a disciplinary board for unauthorized access, harassment, and attempted sabotage. The hearing was scheduled in the same room as my first life misconduct trial. When I saw the notice, I nearly vomited. Room A12, Administrative Wing, Friday, 2 p.m. In my first life, I entered that room as the accused. Ryan sat 3 chairs away, silent and untouchable. My evidence was dismissed as emotional confusion. My work was called derivative. My scholarship was revoked before sunset. This time, Ryan would enter as the accused. I told myself That should feel like justice. It felt like walking willingly into a grave. To prove I wasn't buried there anymore, Professor Hayes offered to accompany me. I accepted. Tyler offered to hide in a supply closet with snacks. For moral support and a possible dramatic entrance, I declined. Though I did take the snacks. My mother called the night before. "Tell the truth. Don't make it gentle for anyone," I cried after hanging up. Because maybe we were both learning. The hearing room looked smaller than I remembered. That angered me. Trauma shouldn't be allowed to shrink. In the second viewing, the same long table stood in the center. The same high windows. The same ugly beige walls. Dean Whitman sat at the head with 2 faculty board members. Ryan sat across from us, his mother on one side, a legal advisor on the other. Mrs. Whitfield looked older than she had a month ago. When she saw me, her face crumpled slightly. But she said nothing. Ryan didn't look at his mother. He looked only at me. Dean Whitman began with formalities. Dates, charges, evidence. Network logs, witness statements, Vanessa's confession, my private files. Ryan's unauthorized presence during suspension. Each item entered the air like a nail. Then Ryan was invited to respond. He stood. For one terrible second, I expected performance, denial, minimization, a brilliant reframing that would turn him into the victim of an unstable girl. That was what he would have done in the first life. That was what I'd prepared to fight. Instead, he said, "I did it." The room froze. His advisor turned sharply. I obtained the login credentials. I gave them to Vanessa Reed. I instructed her to access Madison Cole's files. I remotely displayed selected documents during her presentation. To discredit her, Mrs. Whitfield covered her mouth. Dean Whitman's expression didn't change, but her pen stopped moving. Why? Ryan looked at me then. Not pleading, not cold, ruined. Because she stopped choosing me. The simplicity of it stripped the room bare. He continued, his voice flat. I believed her work threatened my nomination and reputation. I also believed I was entitled to access. Because we'd previously studied together. That belief was false. Professor Hayes's gaze flicked to me. My hands were shaking under the table. Dean Whitman asked, "Do you understand the seriousness of your actions?" Yes. Do you have anything further to add? Ryan's eyes remained on mine. Only that Madison's work is hers. It was always hers. The words hit me harder than I expected. There it was. The sentence I'd waited for in another life. The sentence that might have saved me. The sentence that came 10 years too late. And somehow, exactly on time. I hated him for saying it now. I hated myself for needing to hear it. Dean Whitman asked me to give my statement. I stood, my legs numb. I looked at the board, not Ryan. In my previous academic partnership with Mr. Whitfield, I said, my contributions were often informal and unrecorded. That made it easy for others to misunderstand who created what. This year, I chose to document my work independently. Mr. Whitfield responded by attempting to regain control over my academic identity. The damage was not only emotional. It endangered my candidacy, my reputation, and the privacy of my research participants. I asked the board to treat that seriously. My voice did not break. Then Ryan spoke without permission. I'm sorry, he said. Everyone turned. His advisor whispered sharply. Ryan ignored him. I know it doesn't repair anything, he said to me. I know you don't forgive me. I don't forgive me either, but I am sorry. In my first life, I would have collapsed for those words. I would have mistaken them for healing and crawled back into the cage because the lock had apologized. This time, I let them reach me and go no further. Thank you for saying it, I replied. Do not use it to come near me again. His face tightened. Then he nodded once. The board suspended Ryan for the remainder of the term. They revoked his eligibility for the national program. They placed a formal misconduct record in his file. He would sit final exams separately, under supervision. His name vanished from the Academy's honor board by Monday. People expected me to celebrate. I did not. Victory, I learned, could be quiet and nauseating. It could look like walking out of a hearing room alive, while the person who destroyed you finally told the truth. It could feel less like fireworks, and more like returning stolen furniture to an empty house. For 2 weeks, I focused on the finals. My project advanced. Professor Hayes pushed me brutally. She crossed out entire sections and wrote, "Sharper evidence." And once, devastatingly, "This sentence is hiding from itself." Tyler helped me build a simple visualization tool for my data, though he named the prototype Emotional Labor Goblin, until I threatened to delete his code. Priya became a serious competitor, and unexpectedly, a friend. She didn't ask invasive questions. She simply sat beside me one afternoon and said, "People are angrier when girls stop being convenient." Then she handed me a packet of almond cookies. For the first time, my world filled with people who didn't require my disappearance. Ryan's absence became normal. That scared me too, because part of me had believed he was the center of gravity. Without him, I expected to float apart. Instead, I became heavier in my own life, more solid, harder to move. Then came a letter. Not from Ryan, from his mother. It arrived at my house in a cream envelope, handwritten, no Academy stamp. I almost threw it away. Instead, I opened it at my desk. The window cracked. Rain in the air. "Dear Madison," it began, "I owe you an apology that is not yours to comfort me through." I stopped there. Not yours to comfort me through. The letter went on. Mrs. Whitfield wrote that she had relied on me because I made Ryan easier to love. She admitted she had mistaken my steadiness for willingness. She said Ryan was receiving psychiatric care and academic counseling. She did not ask me to visit. She did not ask me to forgive him. She wrote, "A mother can love her son and still name what he has done. I am trying to learn that before it costs another girl her future." I folded the letter slowly. In another life, Mrs. Whitfield had called me after the hearing. She'd said, "Please don't make public accusations. Ryan's career is delicate." I had apologized to her. I actually apologized. Remembering that made me want to reach back through time and shake myself until my teeth hurt. This time, I placed the letter in a drawer. Not with my research, not with my goals. Some were separate. Some apologies mattered without becoming doors. The national final took place in the Capitol Auditorium, a building too grand for students pretending not to be terrified. 10 finalists from academies across the region, presenting to judges, sponsors, and press. I wore a navy dress my mother had altered twice. Stress kept changing my measurements. My hair was pinned back. My slides were backed up on 3 drives, 2 cloud accounts, and Tyler's ridiculous robot, which he insisted could carry a backup USB in case of espionage. I told him if a robot saved my academic future, I would retire immediately. Before I went on stage, Professor Hayes adjusted my blazer collar. "Brisk hands. Remember," she said, "do not present like you are asking permission to be there." How do I present? Like leaving would inconvenience them. That was absurd enough to calm me. My talk had changed since the semifinal. It was no longer only about invisible support. It was about recognition systems, how schools, workplaces, and research institutions could spot hidden contributors. Before exploitation became scandal, I proposed an authorship transparency protocol for student research, collaborative labor logs, faculty checks for dependency patterns. It was practical. It was personal, without being confessional. It was mine. Halfway through the presentation, I saw him. Ryan stood near the back of the auditorium, beside the exit doors. My voice nearly stopped. He wasn't supposed to be there. Suspended students could technically attend public events. But why would he come? He wore a dark coat over plain clothes, not his uniform. He looked pale, hollow-eyed, still. When our eyes met, he didn't smile. He didn't move closer. He simply stood there and watched me present the future he once stole. For one heartbeat, the old fear returned. Then I clicked to the next slide. No, he didn't get to be the climax of my story again. I finished to strong applause. During questions, a judge asked if my proposal risked over-formalizing student friendships. Only if the friendship depends on one person staying invisible, I said. Healthy collaboration can survive being documented. Another judge asked, what inspired the project? I looked toward the back. Ryan was still there. Then I looked away. Pattern recognition, I said. I noticed a system that rewarded the person on stage. While ignoring the person keeping the lights on, the final results were announced at 6 p.m. I stood between Priya and a boy from a rival academy. His hands shook so violently, his ribbon rustled. My mouth was dry. My feet hurt. My mother sat in the audience, gripping her purse like it owed her money. Tyler had somehow convinced security his robot was assistive technology. He had it parked under his chair. Third place went to the rival academy. Second place went to Priya. My stomach dropped. I clapped hard, smiling, because Priya deserved it. And because I'd already begun preparing myself for disappointment, then the chair of the program lifted the final card. This year's future scholar is Madison Cole. Sound vanished. My mother screamed first. Not dignified, not restrained. A full, startled, joyous scream that made 3 sponsors turn around. Tyler jumped up so fast he kicked the robot. Priya hugged me from the side. Before I even remembered how to move, Professor Hayes clapped once, firmly, like she had personally forced the universe into order. I walked to the stage. The medal was heavier than I expected. The certificate had my name spelled correctly. That detail broke me. Not visibly. I did not sob on stage. But something inside me folded over. Not from pain this time. From relief. A future with my name on it. Not attached to his. Not footnoted. Not stolen. Mine. After photos, after handshakes, after sponsors using words like promising and necessary, I escaped to a side corridor. The noise dulled behind heavy doors. I leaned against the wall. I pressed the certificate to my chest. Congratulations. I opened my eyes. Ryan stood several feet away, not blocking the exit, not close enough to touch. His hands were visible at his sides. Some part of me noted those details and hated that I had to. You shouldn't be here, I said. I know. Then leave. I will. His gaze dropped to the certificate. I wanted to see it happen. Why? His answer took a long time, because in the dreams, I only saw what I took. I wanted to see what it looked like when I didn't. The corridor felt colder. I should have walked away. Maybe a cleaner heroine would have, but I wasn't clean. I was 17 and 27. I was angry and tired and triumphant, still carrying years of unsaid things like stones in my mouth. Does it make you feel better? I asked. No. Good. He nodded faintly. It makes me feel real. I didn't understand that. And I did. In his first life, Ryan had lived inside a myth. Genius, discipline, structure, achievement. Maybe remembering shattered him, because he could finally see all the hands holding up the mirror. Mine, most of all. I'm transferring, he said. The words surprised me. Where? Eastview Academy. A smaller program. Mandatory counseling. No competitions for a year. That sounds healthy. It sounds like exile. Sometimes exile is just a place where nobody claps for your worst habits. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. Then it disappeared. You're crueler now. No, I'm more accurate. Yes, he said. That. Silence stretched. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a notebook. Every muscle in my body tightened. He noticed and held it out immediately, keeping his distance. It's yours. From before. I stared. What? The first timeline. Or the dreams. I don't know. His voice was uneven now. After the hearing, you left a notebook in the study room. I kept it. I told myself I might need it if you made accusations. I never opened it. After you died, in this life, I started remembering pages. I wrote down everything I could recall. I did not take it, he said. He placed it carefully on the windowsill between us. I used to think your notes were valuable because they helped me win. Now I think they were valuable because they prove you were there. My throat closed. He stepped back. I'm not asking you to read it. Then why give it to me? Because I don't want to be the only person carrying evidence of your old life. That sentence entered me slowly. Evidence. In my first life, everything I was had been erased, denied, absorbed. If he had truly recreated pieces of that notebook, he was offering me something. A grave marker. Not redemption, not romance. A record. I picked it up. The cover was plain black. My fingers shook. Ryan watched, his eyes dark and unreadable. I'm sorry I turned needing you into permission to consume you. I looked at him then. There were 1,000 things I could have said. Too late. Not enough. I hate you. I hope you heal. I hope you suffer. I hope I forget your voice. All of them were true, in different corners of me. Instead, I said, become someone who never needs that sentence again. He closed his eyes briefly. Then he left,